Hi, I'm Mary Kopczynski, the CEO of Regalytics. Happy former tax day and welcome to this week's regulatory roundup. This week, there were 750 alerts from 125 unique regulators, a new record for us, but that's because we've been busy adding more and more coverage on our product. 332 had to do with coronavirus. The regulator of the week for the second week in a row are the collective 50 states. On Monday, there were two clusters of states, one in the east and one in the west, that decided they were going to coordinate the reopening of their states together. This rattled the White House, which claimed total control over the reopening of the country. I will not get into politics, but I will share that the governor of Maryland, who hosted the 50-state governor meeting with the White House, released a statement saying that the nation's governors are urging Congress to act immediately and appropriate $500 billion specifically for the states and territories to meet their budgetary shortfalls. If not, the states are going to have to cut back significantly on essential services, which will devastate the ability for people to get back to work and getting the economy back on track. As for the state clusters, I'll start with the East Coast, which includes Connecticut, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, and Rhode Island. The coordinating group, comprised of one health expert, one economic development expert, and the respective chief of staff from each state, will work together to fully integrate the regional framework to gradually lift the state's stay-at-home orders while minimizing the risk of increased spread of the virus. The West Coast contingency includes California, Washington, and Oregon. The states agree on three central guideposts for its decision-making. 1, the residents' health comes first. 2, health outcomes and science, not politics, will guide the decisions. And 3, the states will only be effective if they work together. The topic of the week is executive orders. We are in unprecedented time with all of the 50 states declaring national emergencies, and one of the most common levers to act quickly in the state of an emergency are executive orders. South Carolina, for example, has restrictions on the length and the ability for the governor to issue multiple state of emergency orders in a row. It's kind of like how the president needs Congress to declare an act of war. The states, often the governors require approval from the legislatures so that they can act. And there's a really interesting legal opinion out of South Carolina addressing this issue that is worth a read if you are into constitutional law. For those of you following cannabis, the Illinois Department of Agriculture released final harvest numbers for their 2019 hemp growing season. For those of you following crypto, a company was shut down by the Texas State Securities Board for what was considered a fraudulent COVID-19 charity sale. The cryptocurrency mining company was promising to double investors' money in 1 year while also claiming to contribute money to UNICEF to fight COVID-19. For those of you following cyber, the SEC fined 2 traders who were trading on non-public information that they had hacked from the SEC's Edgar system. Also, the FTC fined a Canadian Internet of Things company for its smart locks that were launched on Indiegogo and were supposed to allow people to unlock their smart lock when they were in Bluetooth range of it. Well, not only could some of the smart locks be easily opened by unscrewing the back panel, the communication between the smart lock and the Bluetooth was not encrypted, so a savvy outsider could effectively open any smart lock. And anyway, the FTC put out a settlement, and you can comment on it if you want. For those of you following data privacy, there's another FTC case last week for violations of the US-EU Privacy Shield. For those of you following LIBOR, the Alternative Reference Rate Committee, or ARC, announced a spread adjustment methodology for cash products. They also said they were happy to hear that Freddie and Ginnie had already transitioned but there is wind of a need to delay the effective date from non-regulatory sources. So we will see where the LIBOR transition goes. And for those of you following a long forgotten topic, LEI, or Legal Entity Identifier, showed up this week from the FICC, which is basically revising its rule books to require each new applicant to include an LEI, to require current members to have a current LEI on file with the FICC at all times. And for sponsoring members, they need to provide LEIs for all current sponsored members and indemnify the FICC for any resulting actions for not having the LEI up to date. So basically, you have to have an LEI now. In other federal news, the big tax drop from the IRS hits this week, so check your mailboxes, of course, with gloves and cleanser. As for other regulators, there were also a lot of proposed regs given extensions on the comment periods. So this includes the NCUA's proposals on corporate credit unions, the FTC's guides to advertising, the FDIC's unsafe and unsound banking practices changes. The consolidated audit trail has received relief from the SEC in regards to timestamps. I am not an HFT person, but apparently there is a difference between a nanosecond and a picosecond. So congratulations, relief is granted. The CFTC made a whole list of all their delayed regulations, so go there for details. The one regulator not letting up in certain areas is the SEC. This week, they suspended 8 companies from trading publicly because of suspect claims made about COVID. Whether the company was producing test kits or PPE, the SEC shut it down temporarily just to prevent scams. The SEC also adopted reforms for business development companies and registered closed-end funds, which included commentary from the various commissioners, some of whom felt the timing was completely inappropriate. And finally, the FDIC issued some clarifications around their supervisory and enforcement practices regarding the mortgage servicing rules in response to COVID-19 and the CARES Act. And finally, in state news, the Vermont Department of Financial Regulation approved all states' requests to refund auto insurance premiums during the stay home, stay safe order. Isn't that sweet? The Wisconsin Department of Financial Institutions issued emergency guidance on debt collection. The California Department of Insurance provided guidance to insurers regarding insurance coverage for delivery drivers for California essential businesses during the COVID-19 health crisis. States were also focused on helping its most vulnerable. The Louisiana governor created the COVID-19 Health Equity Task Force, which will look at how health inequities are affecting communities that are most impacted by the coronavirus. Illinois' governor is expanding testing and alternative housing in communities of color. Washington Governor Jay Inslee issued a proclamation giving high-risk workers the right to protect themselves from COVID-19 without jeopardizing their employment status. The California governor announced a new program to provide frontline healthcare workers with hotel rooms. Meanwhile, Colorado's governor urged hotel and motel owners to provide rooms for the state's most vulnerable. States were also focused on innovation. Alabama governor launched a new COVID-19 search engine tool, and the South Dakota governor announced that South Dakota will be the first state with a hydrochloroquine statewide clinical trial to help fight COVID-19. Michigan and Missouri joined the long list of states reducing unnecessary in-person contact. For example, electronic signatures, remote notaries, remote witness attestations, and remote visitations. Vermont has quarantine restrictions for travelers arriving in Vermont to enjoy their beautiful spring. And South Dakota's State Historical Society is seeking help in documenting COVID-19 in South Dakota. And similar to the SEC, Virginia plowed on forward with business as usual, signing a gun safety law and a reproductive health law into effect, having nothing to do with the current pandemic. That's it this week for Regalytics US Alerts. Go to www.regalytics.ai right now and sign up for our coronavirus financial alerts so you have it all under control. In the meantime, I am here on LinkedIn every Wednesday morning, and the longer version is, of course, on YouTube.